The nurse glanced from the bassinet to my immobilized arm. "Mimi, we can't discharge your daughter with you tonight. Is there someone who can take Sophie?" "My parents," I said immediately. 8-week-old Sophie was sleeping 3 feet from my hospital bed, completely unaware that hours earlier firefighters had pulled us from my wrecked car. She was unharmed. I had bruised ribs, stitches along my hairline, and an arm I could barely move. I called Mom. "Take Sophie," she repeated, "tonight. Just until I can safely hold her again." Mom sighed. "Mimi, we're driving Vanessa to the airport. Her Mediterranean cruise leaves tomorrow." I thought I had misunderstood her. "Mom, I was in a car accident." Dad's voice came through the speaker. "Your sister never has these emergencies." Something inside me went completely still. Then my phone lit up with another notification, one that was about to change who had the power in our family. Mom kept talking, as though we were discussing an inconvenient babysitting request, instead of her injured daughter and newborn granddaughter. "Vanessa has planned this cruise for months. We're not going to upset her right before she leaves by dumping family drama on her." I looked at Sophie. Her tiny hands were curled beside her face. The rear-facing car seat had done exactly what it was designed to do. The doctors had checked her twice and found nothing concerning. I was the problem. The doctor wanted me under observation overnight, possibly longer, and with my ribs and arm, I couldn't safely lift Sophie from her bassinet. "2 nights," I said. "That's all I'm asking." "We can't," Mom replied. "Not we'll figure something out. Not we're coming. Just know." The hospital's social worker must have seen my expression, because she quietly pulled a chair beside me. "We can contact a licensed newborn care agency," she said. I nodded. Within 40 minutes, she had helped me verify a caregiver who could stay with Sophie overnight and assist me after discharge. The emergency arrangement wasn't cheap. "Authorize the deposit," I said. Afterward, I picked up my phone to check the payment confirmation. Instead, a banking notification filled my screen. $5,200 family support, scheduled tomorrow. I stared at it. Every month for 7 years, $5,200 had left my account to help Mom and Dad with their mortgage, insurance, and household expenses. They had always said they needed me. Tonight, I needed them once. And Vanessa's cruise mattered more. I opened the recurring transfer settings. My thumb hovered over cancel ***. Then I pressed it. Recurring payment canceled. I opened my calculator. 84 months. $5,200 each month. 430, $6,800. Nearly $500,000. I looked from that number to my sleeping daughter. And for the first time in 7 years, one question felt impossible to ignore. If my parents could abandon us during the one emergency when I truly needed them, what exactly had I been paying $436,800 for? My phone rang a few hours later. I expected Mom to finally ask how Sophie was doing. Maybe Dad had calmed down. Maybe seeing Vanessa safely off to the airport had reminded them that their other daughter was still lying in a hospital bed. I answered. "Mimi, what did you do?" Mom didn't ask about my stitches. She didn't ask whether the doctors were keeping me overnight. She asked about the money. "What do you mean?" "The transfer. Your father checked the account. Tomorrow's payment isn't coming." I looked toward Sophie. The newborn care specialist was standing beside her bassinet, quietly preparing a bottle while I remained unable to lift my own daughter. "It wasn't a mistake," I said. "I canceled it." There was silence. Then Dad came onto the phone. "Mimi, our household budget is built around that contribution." That word caught me. Contribution. You know what I mean. "No, Dad, I don't think I do anymore." He exhaled sharply. "You can't suddenly remove $5,200 from someone's monthly budget because you're upset." I I stared at the brace, holding my arm still. You suddenly removed yourselves when I needed someone to take your granddaughter for 2 nights. Those are completely different things. How? Helping your family financially is a responsibility you've accepted. Taking care of an 8-week-old baby overnight is a major disruption. I almost laughed, but my ribs hurt too much. 7 years earlier, Dad's work hours had been reduced. Mom told me unexpected expenses were piling up and they were getting dangerously close to losing the house. I'd just landed a high-paying operations job. Grandpa Arthur had believed their situation too. He suggested I help temporarily until Dad recovered financially. 6 months. That was the original plan. But 6 months became a year. Then 2. Every time I mentioned reducing the payments, Mom had another reason they weren't ready. The mortgage, insurance, repairs, unexpected bills. Meanwhile, Vanessa somehow always had help. When her rent jumped, Mom covered the difference. When Vanessa wanted a designer bag for her birthday, she got it. When she needed money for trips, somehow my supposedly struggling parents found it. I'd always assumed they were stretching every dollar. Now, lying there listening to Dad panic over a payment that hadn't even been missed yet, another possibility entered my mind. Dad sent me a breakdown. A breakdown of what? The $5,200. Mortgage, insurance, utilities, everything. Show me exactly where my money goes every month. His voice changed. Mimi, don't start this. I'm asking for numbers. Family members don't demand receipts from each other. I glanced at the woman I'd hired because my own parents wouldn't come. Family members also don't leave their injured daughter, arranging for strangers to care for their newborn granddaughter. Dad went silent. Then he said, "You're being emotional because of the accident." No, I'm finally asking a question I should have asked years ago. I ended the call before he could answer. Seconds later, my phone vibrated again. This time it wasn't Mom or Dad. It was Grandpa Arthur. His message contained only 2 sentences. Don't restart that payment. I'm coming to the hospital. Vanessa posted the photos before Grandpa reached the hospital. I knew because my phone started vibrating nonstop on the tray beside my bed. The family group chat. Vanessa was standing inside the airport terminal in sunglasses and a white travel outfit, smiling beside 2 enormous suitcases. Mom and Dad were in the second photo with their arms around her. Her caption read, "Asterisk, Mediterranean adventure finally happening. Thank you, Mom and Dad, for helping make my dream trip possible." Aunts, cousins, and family friends immediately started responding. Have an amazing time. Beautiful. Send pictures from Greece. Then Aunt Carol entered the chat. Wait, isn't Mimi in the hospital? I heard about the accident. The messages stopped. A minute later, Mom responded. She's fine. Everything is handled. She arranged professional childcare. I read that sentence twice. She arranged. As if I'd casually chosen professional care. As if my parents hadn't refused their 8-week-old granddaughter, because taking Sophie would interfere with the smiling airport scene everyone was looking at. Normally, I would have stayed quiet. For years, I'd protected my parents from uncomfortable questions. This time, I typed 1 sentence. I hired professional care because Mom and Dad declined to take Sophie while I'm hospitalized. I hit send. The group chat exploded. Aunt Carol responded first. Linda, Sophie is 8 weeks old. Why couldn't she stay with you during a medical emergency? Another relative asked whether I was seriously injured. Before I could answer, Vanessa appeared. Seriously, Mimi, you're trying to make me feel guilty for going on vacation now. I stared at the screen. I hadn't mentioned Vanessa. She had mentioned herself. My phone rang almost immediately. Dad. Delete that message. No. Mimi, you're turning relatives against us. I wrote exactly what happened. You deliberately made your mother look terrible. She told everyone I arranged childcare. I explained why. This is family business. So was my accident. Dad's breathing grew heavier. Take it down. No, Dad. I ended the call. Then another message appeared in the family chat. Grandpa Arthur. Robert, did you tell Mimi what her monthly money has actually been paying for? Nobody responded. Not Mom. Not Vanessa. Not even Aunt Carol. Then Dad disappeared from the chat entirely. Seconds later, I saw that he had left the group. My stomach tightened. Grandpa knew. Whatever he was coming to tell me wasn't just about my parents refusing Sophie. A private message from Mom appeared. Mimi, this has gotten completely out of hand. Restore the monthly payment, and we can reconsider taking Sophie while you recover. I froze. Suddenly, they could take her. Apparently, an 8-week-old baby stopped being such an impossible disruption when $5,200 was attached. I took a screenshot. Then Grandpa called. Mimi. Grandpa, Mom just offered to take Sophie if I restart the payment. Don't delete that message. What is going on? There was a pause. Then his voice hardened. Keep that screenshot. Your parents have been lying to both of us for years. Grandpa Arthur walked into my hospital room less than an hour later, carrying a thin folder under his arm. He didn't start with the folder. He walked straight to Sophie. There's my girl, he whispered, looking down into the bassinet. Then he came to my bedside and carefully kissed the part of my forehead without stitches. How bad? Bruised ribs, my arms immobilized. They're keeping me overnight. And Sophie. She's okay. Only then did Grandpa pull the visitor's chair closer. He placed the folder on his lap. Mimi, I need you to tell me something. When these payments started 7 years ago, what exactly did your parents tell you? I frowned. You were there when we discussed helping them. For the beginning, I'm asking what they told you afterward. I thought about it. That Dad's reduced hours had put them behind. Mom said the mortgage and other bills were becoming impossible. And when Robert returned to full-time work, I stared at him. They told me they were still recovering. Grandpa's jaw tightened. For 7 years. They always had another expense. He opened the folder. That's not what Robert told me. My pulse quickened. What did he tell you? That your help was temporary. Grandpa pulled out a document. Later, when I asked why you were still sending money, he said you were doing extremely well and wanted to share your success with your parents. I shook my head. Mom told me reducing it could put them behind on bills. Exactly. He laid another record beside the first. These weren't secret bank records Grandpa had somehow obtained. They were financial documents and information my parents had previously shared with him during family planning discussions. He pointed to the dates. Your father's income recovered years ago. I followed his finger across the figures. Then he showed me records establishing savings my parents had never mentioned when telling me they were struggling month to month. How much did you know about this? I asked. Enough to realize their story stopped making sense. He turned another page. Several large expenses lined up with periods I remembered clearly. Vanessa getting help with rent. Vanessa taking another trip. Vanessa suddenly showing up with things my parents supposedly couldn't afford. I looked at Grandpa. My money. I haven't finished verifying everything, he said. But Mimi, your parents were not surviving month to month the way they told you. The room seemed suddenly quieter. I remembered Dad's panic earlier. Not because I'd been injured. Not because Sophie needed care. Because one transfer had been canceled. I picked up my phone. I only canceled the recurring payment. Grandpa watched me. What are you doing? Making sure canceled means canceled. I called my bank and permanently revoked the recurring authorization. Then I removed Mom and Dad's access from the emergency financial account I'd kept available in case they ever needed immediate help. 2 doors closed in less than 10 minutes. The $5,200 and the backup money behind it. About 20 minutes later, voices rose outside my room. Mom entered first. Dad followed. They had finally come to the hospital. But Mom's eyes went straight to the folder in Grandpa's hands. "Arthur," she said, "what have you been showing her?" Grandpa stood. Mom stepped closer. "This is a misunderstanding." Dad looked at me. "Mimi, whatever your grandfather thinks he knows, you need to hear our side." Grandpa moved between them and my hospital bed. Dad opened his mouth again. Grandpa opened the folder. "No." Dad stopped. Grandpa looked directly at him. "She has listened to your version for 7 years." He pulled out the first document. "Now she gets mine." Grandpa placed the first document on the hospital tray between us. "7 years ago," he said, "Robert really was in trouble." Dad immediately pointed toward him. "Exactly." Grandpa didn't even look up. I wasn't finished. Dad lowered his hand. Grandpa turned to me. "Your father's hours were reduced. Their expenses were piling up. The concern about the house was real. That's why I supported the idea of you helping temporarily." I remembered the original conversation clearly. 6 months. Enough time for Dad's income to recover. Enough time for my parents to stabilize. "So when did that change?" I asked. "Much sooner than they told you." Grandpa slid another record toward me. "Robert returned to full-time income years ago. Their financial position improved. They also had savings they weren't touching while continuing to accept your money." Mom folded her arms. "That doesn't mean we didn't have expenses." "Nobody said you didn't," Grandpa replied. "The question is whether you needed $5,200 from Mimi every month to survive." Mom's mouth tightened. Grandpa continued. "The answer is no." I looked at Dad. "You knew I thought you could lose the house. We had obligations." "That wasn't my question." He looked away. Grandpa tapped the documents. They discovered something convenient. Mimi's money could cover a significant portion of their regular household expenses while their own income stayed available. Available for savings. Available for comfort. And increasingly, available for Vanessa. The scattered pieces I'd ignored for years suddenly formed one picture. Vanessa's rent assistance. Her shopping. Her repeated trips. Every time I'd wondered how my supposedly struggling parents managed it, Mom had given me some vague answer about making things work. They had been making things work with my money. I looked at Mom. Was I paying for Vanessa? "Don't phrase it like that." "How should I phrase it?" "We're a family. Money moves around." I almost couldn't believe she had said it. Grandpa answered before I could. "Money moves around when everyone knows that's the arrangement. Mimi was told she was preventing financial disaster." Mom turned toward him. "She voluntarily sent us that money." I felt something settle inside me. "Yes, because every time I suggested reducing it, you told me what would happen." Mom said nothing. I continued. "You told me bills might go unpaid. You told me the mortgage was still difficult. You told me Dad's income hadn't recovered enough. You made me believe stopping would hurt you." "We never forced you." "No, you just made sure I felt guilty enough to keep paying." Dad finally stepped forward. "We were going to tell you." Grandpa looked at him. "When?" Dad hesitated. Grandpa's voice stayed calm. 7 years wasn't enough time. Dad had no answer. I looked toward Sophie's bassinet. She was asleep again, one tiny fist tucked near her cheek. That morning, I'd been terrified. I couldn't lift my daughter. I didn't know whether I'd wake up the next day, feeling better, or discover another complication from the accident. And the two people I'd spent 7 years protecting financially had told me their granddaughter was too inconvenient because Vanessa had a cruise. I pointed toward Sophie. When I was lying here unable to pick up my own baby, I finally learned what family means to you. Mom's expression shifted. Mimi. No, you told me taking Sophie was too disruptive. I picked up my phone. Then, after I canceled the money, suddenly you wanted to reconsider. I opened her message and held the screen toward them. Mom's own words filled it. Restore the monthly payment, and we can reconsider taking Sophie while you recover. Her face fell. Dad looked at her. Even he seemed caught off guard by how plainly she'd written it. I lowered the phone. You attached a price to helping your injured daughter. That isn't what I meant, Mom whispered. It's exactly what you wrote. Nobody spoke for several seconds. Then Dad asked the question I knew was coming. So what happens now? I looked at him. The $5,200 is over. Mom immediately shook her head. Mimi, you can't make a permanent financial decision while you're upset. I already did. I told them I'd revoked the recurring authorization permanently. Then I told them I'd removed their access to my emergency financial account. Dad's face changed. You removed that too? Yes. What if something happens? I looked around the hospital room. Something did happen. That ended the argument. I told them the money that had supported their household would now support mine. Childcare. Emergency savings. Sophie's future. My parents could rebuild a relationship with me someday if their actions changed, but money would never again be part of that relationship. And Sophie, Mom asked. Being her grandparents doesn't give you automatic access to her. Trust will determine that. Grandpa closed the folder. Then Dad looked at him. I could almost see the next calculation happening. Grandpa stopped it before he could ask. And don't come to me expecting me to replace Mimi's payments. Dad's shoulders stiffened. Grandpa continued. I won't finance this arrangement, and I won't subsidize Vanessa's lifestyle either. Vanessa still took her Mediterranean cruise. But when she returned, the system she'd relied on was gone. Mom and Dad told her they could no longer keep covering the same expenses. Trips, rent assistance, shopping, things that had always seemed to appear somehow, suddenly required her own money. The family group chat changed too. Everyone now understood why I'd stopped helping. Mom and Dad could call me selfish if they wanted, but they could no longer do it without someone remembering the hospital, Sophie, and the cruise. During my recovery, I kept the professional newborn care I'd arranged. And something surprised me. There was peace in paying someone to do a job and having them reliably show up. No guilt. No favoritism. No reminding me what I'd supposedly owed them. Just help when I needed help. Months later, my ribs had healed. My arm was back to normal. Sophie was thriving. And every month, the same $5,200 that used to leave my account still had a purpose. Only now, that purpose was us. Part went into savings. Part covered childcare. Part went into an education fund for Sophie. Grandpa remained close, but he never pressured me to forgive my parents or pretend everything was normal. He respected the boundaries I'd set. Mom and Dad had to restructure their own finances and cut the lifestyle they'd built around money they should never have considered permanent. For the first time, their financial choices belonged entirely to them. And for the first time in years, mine belonged entirely to me. I stopped measuring whether I was a good daughter by how much I could sacrifice. I had a daughter of my own now. She deserved a mother who understood that love wasn't something you purchased by making yourself endlessly useful. The accident cost me weeks of recovery. But the moment my parents refused my 8-week-old baby, it ended a 7-year bill I should never have been paying.